Have you ever thought about that sense of giftedness, the gifts that your child has? So, I heard a speaker probably 33 years ago talk about that sense of giftedness, and that some of us have ordinary gifts. We can walk, we can talk, we can read, and some of us lack those ordinary gifts. And instead, we have extraordinary gifts. Now, this is the wisdom I heard from Judith Snow, a powerhouse of a self advocate. And when I heard her speak at this conference 33 years ago, when our son Dylan was just 3 years old, I thought, I love this. I love looking at our child and the gifts that they have to contribute. So right after the conference, I went home, and that evening we had a family meeting, and we all sat down and talked about our ordinary gifts that each of us have. And we talked about the extraordinary gifts that each of us have in our family. And I was paying particular note to what Dylan's sister and brother were saying were some of his extraordinary gifts, along with my husband's comments. And I thought, you know what? This would be perfect to type up as a list of Dylan's extraordinary gifts, because we need to all remember this. So for his first IEP meeting at his elementary school, where we were talking about preschool, but what I did is I took a box and I wrapped it with some wrapping paper, and I brought the box to Dylan's IEP meeting. And I shared that story of Judith Stone and how she looks at that sense of giftedness. And so I shared the story at Dylan's IEP meeting. And then I took the gift box and opened it up. And inside, I had typed different extraordinary gifts that Dylan has. So let me just share a couple of them with you right now. Dylan has that extraordinary gift of having unconditional love for others. His sense of curiosity, his imitation skills. He knows sign language and communicates very readily. He has this assertiveness about him that is an extraordinary gift. He has an undaunted spirit. He can teach others about the value of belonging. He's a kid that likes to have fun. And so what I did is I passed this gift box around to each person sitting there at the conference table. And each person took out a list of Dylan's extraordinary gifts and started reading through them. And the shift of the tone of that meeting was amazing. And what I loved is that we started out on this positive note versus going through testing results and the laundry list of what Dylan can't do, right? And it was such like an emotional but also grounding impact that our gift box became a tradition. And when we went to Dylan's IEP meetings, we always brought his gift box. So today, what I want us to do is look at some of those extraordinary gifts that your child has, and how are we letting the staff know about that? So if this perks your interest, stay tuned, because we are going to be talking about this. So I'd love to do a quick check-in. If you do an About Me profile that you share with staff at the beginning of the year, just type a yes or a not yet in the chat. And the other thing I would love for you to share is what is like one of the big things that you want teachers to truly understand about your child? So yes, we have this About Me profile that talks about what they do best, what doesn't work, what works. Your vision might be there. And let's look at what is that one big thing that you really would love staff to know, understand, and tap into for your child. So give us some comments in the chat. Whether you're watching live or on the replay, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we're going to be looking at 3 ways that we can help teachers have an even deeper understanding of your child. And it's about using that About Me profile and a little bit of a twist. So here we go. And let me see our comments. Sasha says, yes, she says that she does a graphic organizer with her picture in the center. I love it. I love it. And see, that's the other thing that's so nice about when you're sharing your ideas in the chat, because that like spurs an idea for another parent. So I can just kind of picture it, right? Your child front and center. Yeah, and just that photograph can make a difference. If this is the real person that we're talking about, right? Because I think as parents, you've probably heard from friends or in a Facebook group or maybe from an advocate, the advantage of starting the year by sharing that About Me profile. The problem is, I don't know how many teachers actually read it and understand it before the year starts. Because as a retired teacher, 30 years teaching, that beginning of the school is like so incredibly busy. Teachers are going to district meetings, building meetings, grade level meetings, department meetings. They're trying to get their rooms set up. They're trying to figure out their schedule for the year. It's like so many things are coming at them that a lot of times I think that About Me profile becomes another paper that's stacked and piled high on their desk. And that's not what we want, right? So this is what we're going to be doing, and what we're going to be looking at first are 3 different scenarios. And what I would like you to understand is that these may be scenarios that like you tap into. It's like, yeah, this sounds familiar to me. So if it does, you can make some comment in the chat box there. So let's look. So one of the things that I see as a scenario that quite often teachers do, and I have to put my glasses on here, is that you shared your profile with the teachers, and yet months later, you might hear staff saying, oh, I didn't realize that. Does that, I didn't know that didn't work with them. All these little things that they didn't realize that you had captured in that About Me profile. And the mistake here that I think you're making is that you somehow have this sense of, if I share this at the beginning of the year, teachers will know. But the mistake is we only share that at the beginning of the year, and we don't refer back to it throughout the year. So it makes us feel good. It makes our kids feel good to give that. But if we're only using it once a year, that really doesn't have the impact that you want. So scenario 2 is that you keep hearing from the parents, from, maybe the music teacher, like, it's like, I never heard of this before. And the mistake here is assuming that all the staff is going to get a copy of your child's About Me, the staff that works with your child, right? And you're assuming that that message gets passed on to other people that work with your child. And that is not always true. And so that is something that we certainly want to correct, right? So, and here's scenario 3, drum roll. And I find this especially with older students that now have the understanding of what their accommodations are. So maybe this scenario is your child has to keep re-explaining to the parent, to the teachers, that he is supposed to get extra time for assignments, or he is supposed to have a quiet place where he can do the tests. So the mistake in this scenario is that that About Me profile isn't connected to your child's IEP. So we are going to be looking at 3 ways that we can turn these problems around and really get teachers to better understand your child. So keep your comments and questions coming. So with the problem of you just usually share the About Me profile at the beginning of the year. So what I try to do is like, what are trigger points throughout the year that might be a good kind of natural way for us to share that About Me profile and like kind of go, remember? So one thing is a lot of schools will issue report cards every 9 weeks, every quarter. That's also probably when you get your IEP progress reports. So when you get those quarterly reports from school, that's a great kind of signal, like, oh yeah, I need to make sure we're really looking at this About Me profile and really using the information in helpful ways. So, you could do that through an email. I think verbal conversations are always best. So every quarter, you can make it a habit to, request a short meeting. And it can be an informal meeting, it can be an IEP meeting, but you want to get that conversation going about, like, one thing I noticed was, that he's still bringing home books from the library that are way too hard for him to read, and he doesn't really ever even look at them. And on his About Me profile, we had mentioned that if he has a book about trains, he certainly will get into that book. So just little things like that add up. So you want to have regular times. And some parents have like monthly meetings set up with the IEP team. That could be a time where you bring that About Me profile back and say, does anybody have questions? How is this being used? And then another time, a natural time would be during IEP meetings, when you have a review IEP meeting, to again bring that About Me profile and review it and ask people how they've been using it. Because we don't want just, like, oh, that's so nice, thank you, and they kind of nod their heads, but nothing ever changes. That's not the reaction we want, right? We want it to be actually useful. So the second idea and the second tip I have for you about how to really use that About Me profile is to make sure you share it widely and intentionally. And this reminds me of what we do we have a parent group called Connecting for Change. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is widening our circle of allies. And so when I look at the About Me profile, I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to widen our circle of allies at school and help other staff members that typically don't get information about your child. So, for instance, the music teacher might not know that your child's taking piano lessons. And like if your child had the opportunity to show off some new songs that they've learned to play, that would be magical to happen in one of the music classes. Or maybe the art teacher. The art teacher, elective teachers are usually left out of the loop. Does your art teacher know that fine motor skills is something that your child is working on? But with these certain adaptive scissors, with this, with that, art class is going to be so much more fun and successful for your child. So think about other people in the building that your child comes in contact with, but I bet they don't have a copy of your child's About Me profile. So if any of these are like, ooh, that's a great idea, let us know in the chat. Or if you have some other ideas about how we can use that About Me profile throughout the year, type those in too, because it's always great to get other people's ideas. Now, the third way that we need to be really thoughtful with our About Me profile is if it's something that's important to be in your child's profile, then my guess is it's something important to be in your child's IEP. Because we know the About Me profile isn't something that the staff has to legally, consider or have in place. However, when we build that bridge between your About Me profile and your child's IEP, and we make sure all those important things from the About Me profile are included in the IEP, then you can keep the district accountable for actually putting those in place. So it might be in the accommodations section where you have certain things that this makes such a difference if this accommodation is in place for your child. It might be near the beginning of the meeting when you're talking about present levels and you're talking about what your child is interested in and how teachers can tap into that. So whatever you have on your About Me profile, whether it's your vision statement or what works, what doesn't work, I would go back to your IEP and say, do we have this anywhere written in the IEP? So what do you think? What do you think? Those are 3 easy things that you could start implementing this year. And I know through some of the discussion here on our Art of Advocacy Facebook page, I've heard of other great ideas that I wanted to shout out from parents. One, parents having their child go around to their teachers and share their About Me profile. Instead of it just being emailed from you as a parent, think of the power that comes with your child sharing it. And what I would hope is that they don't just hand it to the teacher, but your child has a conversation about it. So if that's something, depending on the age and everything of your child, that's something that you could try that also I think is wonderful. Um, The other thing I've heard from parents is that they'll often put a list of accommodations, maybe at the front of their child's notebook. So if they do have to remind a para, a TA, or another staff member, like these are my accommodations, that's a way your child can be, using those self-advocacy skills. So think about ways that we can integrate the About Me profile. And I think you'll see this explosion of wonderful possibilities opening up for your child when other people really understand what you want them to understand about your child. So if you have any questions or comments, and like I said, even if you're watching the replay, type it in because we can spend some time right now talking about questions or other ideas that you have. So this becomes a rich resource for other people. So let's see. So Sasha says, how do we link the IEP goals accommodations to the stuff in About Me? So yes, great question. So it depends on what you have written on the IEP or on the About Me profile. So if you have, a section on what works well, and you say it really helps if my child sees another student do this task first, and then my child can, watch and do that. So that's something that a lot of kids, right? It's like, I need to see somebody actually do this, and then I can figure it out. So that can be an accommodation written in the IEP that your child first watches a classmate do the task, and then your child tries it. So you can, use that wording in the About Me profile and transfer it over to the IEP. Now, sometimes parents will have a box or circle on the About Me page, and it's like, these are priorities of what we want our child to learn this next year. And it might be, centered around, reading comprehension, because maybe your child reads really well, but then when you ask them questions about what they read, they're like, it's harder for them to either remember it, express it. So that could turn into an IEP goal, right? We want our child to be able to understand what they're reading. So that could transfer as an IEP goal. So Sasha, let me know if that's helpful. And thank you for joining the conversation and asking questions. So anything else that comes to mind, let me know. And yes, I think, let me see, I have to see where I can hide this comment. Hide. So I wanted to make this something that's actionable that you can take and start doing. So Sasha and others that are here, which step do you think you're most interested in trying? Do you want to do those quarterly updates, figure out times during the year when you can bring that About Me profile back? Or do you want to look at maybe other people in the building, like the librarian or the principal? I don't know how many principals get a copy of the About Me. That could be pretty cool. Or do you want to start with going back through that About Me profile and saying, is this captured in the IEP? If it's important enough to be on the About Me, I think it's important enough to be somewhere in your child's IEP. And that might be with, student input, parent input. It just kind of depends on what you're sharing. So thank you for being here with us. We do Facebook Lives on this page 2 times a month. The days, usually Thursdays, but sometimes we have to change things up. So if you don't follow this page, follow it, and then you will be able to see when we go live next. And I appreciate the time and the effort and the tears and the smiles that go into making sure that our children are understood, to make sure that they're safe, happy, and learning every day with their classmates. Because that's what I'm here for, is to help you do that for your own child. Oh, and guess what? I forgot to tell you the rest of the story. So the gift box, right? So every beginning of the IEP meeting, we would share those, and it was great. But guess what? Guess what the mistakes were that I made? I did not bring up his extraordinary gifts throughout the year. I did not make sure that other people in the building that are going to be helping and supporting and being with Dylan knew about it. And it never crossed my mind to take these things that are Dylan's extraordinary gifts and make sure they were included in the IEP. So we all learn from what we know, right? And what we do is based on what we know. And as Maya Angelou reminds us, when we know better, we can do better. So I want you to know that I've made plenty of mistakes raising Dylan, going to meetings. And I'm hoping that I can share these mistakes with you, so it's something that you don't have to go through. So until we see you again, thank you for being here, and we will be in touch. And